God, you're so good. Has he been good to you? I love you, Lord, for your mercy never failed me. In all my days, I've been held in your hand. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, I will sing of the goodness of God. 'Cause all my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so good, yeah. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. I love your voice. You have led me through the fire, the darkest nights. You were close like no other. I know you as a father, and I know you as a friend. I have lived in the goodness of God. Let's raise it together. Sing all my life. All my life you have been faithful. Has he been faithful to you? Hey! All my life you have been so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Let's raise it up. Say your goodness. Your goodness is running after. It's running after me. Your goodness is running after. It's running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after. It's running after me. See, your goodness is running. Your goodness is running after. It's running after me. Yeah. Your goodness is running after. It's running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. Yeah. Your goodness is running after. It keeps running after me. 'Cause all my life you have been faithful, and all my life you have been so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Hey, yeah, yeah, yeah. Say all my life you have been faithful. praise to the only faithful God. Raise up a praise because he's good. Raise up a shout because he's good. You are 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 good. It's running after me. Your goodness is running out. It's running after me. Say, y'all say, your goodness is running out. It's running after me. Your goodness is running. Your goodness is running out. It's running after me. You got a better one. Say, your goodness is running. Your goodness is running out. It's running. It's running after me. Your goodness is running. Your goodness is running out. It's chasing me down. It's chasing me down. I can't get away. Your goodness is running out. It's chasing me down. It's chasing you 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 down. Nowhere you can go. There's nowhere you can go. It's gonna find you. It's chasing you down. It's chasing you down. It's
Hi, good evening, everyone. The Wesleyan Holiness Church, Western Jamaica District Women's Department welcomes you this evening to our second session of webinar under the theme Combating Current Affairs and the COVID Crisis. Let me just repeat our theme for this evening: Combating Current Affairs and the COVID Crisis. To all our participants on Facebook, Zoom, and YouTube, welcome. Welcome, welcome. I'm Andrea Foster, your moderator for this evening. Our focus this evening is on mental health challenges and the response or roles of parents, children, and caregivers. Let us bow our heads in a moment of prayer. Hallelujah. Father, we give you praise, honor, and glory for this evening. We thank you for the opportunity that you have given us, Lord, that we could step aside from the usual gathering of our church environment on this awesome platform, that we are able to touch so many more souls with the word and with life matters that affect all of us. This evening, Lord, our focus is on mental health. And you said in your word that we should cast our cares upon you because you care for us. We know that, God, you care for us holistically. And so in all our facets of our lives, whether it is spiritual, physical, emotional, mental, psychological, Lord, you care. And so this evening, God, we want to place this evening's proceedings into your hands. We ask that, Lord, you'll take full control. Whatever the outcome is and the help that we receive, we give you the honor and glory, and we say thanks to you in Jesus' name. Amen and amen. Ladies and gentlemen, this evening we have with us to present for us this evening a gentleman who is married with 2 children. Our presenter resides in Westmoreland, and he is a graduate of the University of the West Indies, where he has acquired a master's in communication for social behavior change and a diploma in gender development studies. He also holds a certificate in social work with a distinction. This stalwart of a man, also a past student of the Sablamar High School. He has given his services in several different institutions, some of which are the Westmoreland Health Department, Sablamar High School as vice principal and a teacher in the sciences. He also has given his services in the institutions in the UK, several institutions in the UK. Presently, he serves at the Westmoreland Health Department as Parish Health Promotion, or what we would say, an education officer. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome our presenter for this evening, one with whom I've met with and have sat in sessions with him. I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, will be an awesome evening full of education. Now, I present to you this evening, Mr. Gerald Miller. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Are you hearing me?
Yes, sir, we are hearing you clearly.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Foster, for your kind words of introduction. And I will certainly try my best to honor what you have said about me. Right, Mrs. Foster?
Mr. Miller, we're not able to see you.
You're not able to see you? Oh, sorry.
No, sir.
Are you seeing me now?
You are on, and then now you're on.
Yeah,
now I can
good.
see you.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. Yes,
Excellent,
sir.
good.
All of those words are true.
Let's give
And sir, before you go on, I just want to say, ladies and gentlemen, you could put your questions in the chat, and Mr. Miller is very interactive, and I'm certain he will do all in his power to answer all of our questions. So if you're on YouTube, please place your questions in the chat. Also on Zoom, we are eager here to respond to all your questions. Over to you, Mr. Gerald Miller.
Yes, thank you very much. I am extremely delighted to be sharing in this afternoon's webinar session. And I want to say thanks to Mrs. Bantin for inviting me to make this presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to speak with you. And you notice I said speak with, I use a preposition with, which means although it is a webinar, I expect some interaction from the audience. And so I want to speak with you briefly on what I have characterized as the PQ navigation of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we're looking at P cube. So you can do it mathematically. So we're looking at 3 P's as we navigate this COVID pandemic with regards to the involvement of our parents. Can someone tell me, unmute and tell me what you think those 3 P's are? We want it to be interactive because a teacher ought to be eliciting from his or her students. So I don't want to be imitating. I want to be eliciting from my audience. So can you tell me, can someone tell me what you think those 3 P's are?
I'm going to ask you at this time to use the raise hand signal. So use that so we can identify you before you open your microphones to speak. Thank you.
Indeed.
So if you are going to help us to respond to that question, Mr. Miller, could you ask the question again so we could use the raise hand feature in order to respond?
I'm saying,
go ahead, sir.
The title of the presentation which
Yes.
will encapsulate your theme. I have referred to the presentation, the theme, 3 P's, the P cube, navigation of the COVID-19 pandemic. And these three P's are very important in managing and protecting the mental health of not just the parents, but also of the children. So I want someone to tell me what they think the 3 P's represent. And these 3 P's would have been taken from the Child Care and Protection Act. Can anyone have a guess at it?
Can I
Who's
guess
having a
one?
go? Yes.
Protect.
Good. Protection. So parents have to play a part. Good. You're a brilliant student, Mrs. Foster. What do you think the
Thank
next
you.
one is? The other two.
Preserve.
Not preserve. Parents have to preserve too, but it's not preserve in this context. Let me give you the remaining two. Provision and participation. So parents have to provide, no sir? Eh?
Yes, sir.
And
Yes,
parents
sir.
have to protect and parents have to engage the children. So participation. So that's the context. So we are looking at the 3 P's in navigating this pandemic. And one of the things that I want to say in this preamble before I get into the meat of the matter and the discussion, right across the world, and you know, for persons who have been following the international news and so on, would have seen that our children have been experiencing serious mental health challenges. I was reading an article 2 weeks ago in Singapore, where Singapore is one of the countries in Southeast Asia that has very low murder, low crime rate, very low crime in that country. And coupled with that, they have very high achievers. The academic performance of the students in that country is impeccable. And
Wow.
there's a 13-year-old boy who went online, bought an axe. You can imagine. And he brought that axe to school and hacked one of his classmates to death. This child, the perpetrator of the crime, he doesn't have any contact with the person in the sense that he doesn't know the child, he doesn't know the person. So the student was not really familiar. He wasn't familiar with the student. And he had the child, and it just created that kind of, you know, distress in Singapore, because they have never seen anything like this before. And there's countless number of cases. If you are to look in Jamaica, we would have seen evidence of children who are being traumatized. There's this level of violence being carried out against children. So there are so many things that are happening with our children, and hence the involvement of our parents is very important. So the first thing that I want to zero in on is to look at proactivity and calmness. And that comes under provision. How do we provide that calm spirit in engaging our children? How can we be proactive? So proactivity and calmness are two very important variables there as we navigate this pandemic. So we must have calm and proactive conversation with our children about the disease and the important role they can play in keeping themselves healthy and safe. How are we doing with that? Are we giving the information and ensuring that the information that is being communicated to our children is accurate. Because remember, we are experiencing an infodemic. There's so much information that is out there, but are we getting the facts so we can clarify what needs to be clarified? So our children can have the right information to make decisions that are informed. And so that is one of the variables that I want to focus on under this section of provision. So the first one is the proactivity and calmness. So we have to be calm. We see so many parents are angry. This afternoon, I saw a video being circulated on social media with a parent who apparently was flogging a child, using her fist to hit the child, and the child was retaliating, and it created this kind of brawl in the community. So we see evidence. While we can't say it is COVID, as a result of COVID-19, but we never can tell, that person. Some people are getting frustrated. The issue of unemployment and persons, the uncertainty pertaining to COVID, people are concerned. And so these things can result in people becoming angry, and that can be used against our children. The next point I want to raise with you this afternoon: stick to routine. How do we get our children to stick to our routine? How is that going? That is very important, because remember, while they were engaging in the online platform for their instruction, the teachers would have given timetables. So they would have gotten a timetable which would outline when they were going to be having their classes. But outside of that, we have to set some parameters. There are structures that we have to put in place as parents. And sometimes this is where we have fallen down. We do not provide that structure. And we're talking about the participation, because we have to engage them now in doing that kind of, creating that framework where they are going to be adhering to some kind of routine. And that's very important. So the children must have a schedule. There must be time that we allow them to play. That's very good. And for them to make some connection, that social connection, and with their peers, their friends, and family members too. So we can get them involved, and that's the participation now. Get them involved in the decision, in setting these kind of structures or the routine for them. They need time to help around the house. So we need to get them involved. Whether we are going to get them involved in gardening or something to do, but there are chores around the house. And sometimes I say to myself, where have we gone wrong as parents? I have two kids. I have one is 19, and the second one, the last one, second and last, he is 9. And many times I say to myself, we give the 9-year-old, the 19-year-old has given her brother a routine that he has to do. My wife and I didn't give him, but she apparently has given him a routine. And what do you think that routine is? His job is to make sure the grills are locked at nights and the doors are closed. And he has to make sure the back grill is closed and there's nothing being thrown on the floor. Everything is intact. So he has a structure. And that structure was given to him by his sister, not by his parents, no. So I'm just saying we have to provide that kind of environment where we can engage them and also allow them, hold them responsible for what they have agreed to do. And that's very important. So they must be given time to help around the house. The chores are important. Some of us are not, as parents, are not giving our children things to do at home, but we must assign chores to them because they too can help us in navigating in this challenging time. The next point I want to focus on: check with them to ascertain what they are hearing. And this is a participation now. So we're looking at participation. We must get them involved. It must be a participatory approach. Too many of us as parents do not allow them to be a part of the decision making. So we take the autocratic approach and we say it is my way or no way. In this dispensation, I am saying to our parents that we have to engage them. We have to allow them to be a part of the decision-making process. So in this, we need to find out from them in the participatory process, ascertain from them what they are hearing about COVID-19. We need to know. And that's why I mentioned initially that we must get the facts. We must provide them with factual information as it relates to the pandemic. So we must get the facts, and it must be in a position, we must be in a position where we can communicate the facts to them in a way that they will understand. So there's so much information, as I've mentioned, about the infodemic. People are being bombarded with so much information, some of it very spurious on social media. And we want persons, and our parents in particular, to become conversant and armed as it relates to the information. So being conversant with the information that is out there that is relevant to COVID-19. So find out what they are hearing, and let them know that COVID is around, and let them know the facts about it. By doing so, you will be able to clarify the inaccuracies that they might have heard. Because there are so many things on the road today. I was engaging persons in the bus park. And, while I was there trying to remind the persons of the protocols pertaining to COVID-19, because we have seen in this parish, and I don't think Westmoreland is unique, but people are becoming lax since the measures have been adjusted. And so I was there, and there was this bus operator who didn't have on a mask, and I was saying to him, you need to put on your mask, you need to pay attention, observe the protocols. And he started to tell me that, see how they assassinate the president in Haiti, and it's because he was speaking out against COVID and so on. So you can imagine he's communicating something that you and I, we don't have any evidence of what he was saying. And so I said to him, you can't make those kind of assumptions and advance that argument, because it's not factual. So I'm just making the point to say we too have to make sure we don't just go and parrot what other persons are saying. We have to get our facts, because if we do not get our facts, then we too can create confusion in the minds of our children and allow them to make decisions that are not informed. Create some welcome distraction. That is one of the points that I want you to pay attention to. So far, we have looked at the proactivity and the calmness. Our parents need to exhibit those very important attributes there. Proactivity and calmness. So we must get the information. We stick to routine, and we're looking at checking with them, checking with our children to ascertain what they have been hearing. And then we want to create a welcome distraction. How can we create that welcome distraction? How many of us are having movie time with the children? How many of us are, playing games with them, allowing them to have something outside of the mundane things that they do, the schoolwork, and all these activities that they would have been engaging during the week or during the day? We have to create that kind of situation where they can be distracted. Do we allow them to get involved in cooking, do some cooking? So it's very important for us to take that into consideration. The next point I want you to focus on, how do we monitor our own behavior? Because some of us are very emotive as it relates to COVID-19 and the impact it is having on us, on our children. Yeah. We can get our emotions involved. We are very anxious. How do we manage the anxiety so our children don't become overwhelmed and can't look at the situation in a very dispassionate way? Because children, as one writer says, children take our arm, they follow our example, not our advice. So we must display that level of calmness, and we must be able to be dispassionate. We must be able to be dispassionate because those emotional cues that they will take from us might create problems for them, might help to create mental health issues for them. They might become depressed because you apparently, as a parent, you are having challenges dealing with your emotions and dealing with the challenges, and that can be easily be picked up by our children. So it's important for us to take into consideration that all of us have that responsibility as parents to make sure we are providing and recapping, make sure we are providing for them, and provision that fits into Maslow hierarchy of needs. We have to provide that kind of psychological support for them. The physiological support, I know you have been providing that, the food, the clothing, and the shelter. Unfortunately, some of our children are being affected in the area of the provision of food. And so it's a challenge because COVID has created, economic upheavals, and we too in Jamaica, lots of parents have lost jobs, and some persons have to accept pay cuts. And so these things would have impacted in a very negative way. But we are a resilient people, and we can overcome. So if there are challenges, and sometimes we need to communicate with each other if we are having challenges on that side, on the provision side, providing the things that are needed. We can, approach the state agencies, for support if there are challenges on that front. The Ministry of Labor has programs through the PATH program, which you can get support. So don't sit there and say you're not going to ask anybody, you don't have it, and your child is there in need of some food, clothing, and shelter. Shelter, so many children are having that challenge where the parents do not have, unfortunately, the proper infrastructure, housing infrastructure for them to enjoy a decent standard of living. But we have to be our brother's keeper, and if there are someone within our church or within the community that we know of, we can try to see how we can render some form of assistance to these individuals. So the protection side is very important. Parents have to play that important role in the protection of our kids. Where are our children? Where is your child? How many of us are asking those questions? We see our children many times on the road. They are out there soliciting. Recently I saw two boys by Shabbos Fair and I was engaging them. And I said to one of them, "Where do you live?" And he said, "I live on Darling Street." I said, "What happened to your parents?" And he said, "Oh, my mother lives in Kingston and my father is," I think he said the father is in Spanish Town, somewhere in in the Kingston area. And I said to him, "But you should be at home now." He said, "Well, he doesn't have anything to eat." So you see, we are violating these children, their rights. They need to be in an environment where they are protected. So the Child Care and Protection Act speaks to that. So many of us as parents have fallen short in that regard. Parenting is a challenging task. It is the most difficult job in my estimation on earth. You know, I have 2 kids, and although I don't have problems with my children, but the issue of you have to be there for them and to be supportive of them and to deal with their emotions. You have your emotions, you have to also balance it, and how you get them and support them and motivate them and encourage them is important. So that is on the protection, the safety. We have to ensure that our children are not in areas, in settings where they can be sexually molested. We see an increase in that now, where molestation is on the increase. And you know, these things have been happening for some time, but there seems to be an increase in the number of children who have been molested, whether by stepfather or other close contact. So these things are happening, and so we must be vigilant. So if you observe a behavior where the child becomes reserved, the child used to be very garrulous, they're very talkative, but now the child is relaxed, not speaking as he or she used to, then those are things that you have to start to pay attention to. So observation is important. We have to observe our children and know our children and know when something is not right. When you see anything that is unusual, you need to make it known and you need to seek help before it's too late and the child might become depressed and, you know, as a result, take his or her own life, because sometimes these things happen and we must be mindful of that. So I want to challenge all of our parents who are in the audience and, you know, prospective parents to be reminded of the 3 Ps as we navigate this challenging environment. We don't know what the future holds as it relates to COVID and what will happen in September and beyond. We have to be hopeful and we must engender some level of hope and confidence, because if we don't engender the hope, then our children can become depressed and become overwhelmed with what is happening, and we are there to provide that level of that buffer that they require in these challenging times. So we can't be buckling under the stress or buckling under the challenges of COVID-19. We must be there to offer that kind of buffer that they need at this time. So I am just reminding you of the 3 Ps as we navigate, and the pointers that I've mentioned on the 3 Ps. So the issue of being proactive and calm, the issue of stick to a routine. You have to ensure that children have some structure. Too many of our parents are not reinforcing that. So that is important, and check in with your child to see what is happening. Have that dialogue. You need to communicate with them. Try to ascertain what are the issues affecting them, what are the issues pertaining to COVID that is bothering them. And we must create that kind of welcome distraction. Amid the challenges of COVID, how can we distract them so they don't become overwhelmed and everything becomes monotonous? And to monitor our behavior, we have a responsibility. We have to lead by example. The children take our example and not our advice. And that is what many of us believe. We give them advice, but they are looking at what we are doing. And so I want to challenge all of you this afternoon to be hopeful. We cannot give up on hope. Hope must always be in our minds and must be forefront in our thought process. We can't allow the children to see that we are becoming disillusioned with what is happening. Stay focused. There is hope And I know that if we provide the leadership for our children, they can be successful in their pursuits of excellence. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, there you have it. The 3 P's: protect, provision, and participation. Ladies and gentlemen, help me appreciate Mr. Miller, who has challenged us in a real serious way this evening with regards to us, the responsibilities that we have as parents and caregivers for our children. However, Mr. Miller, as I listen to you, I am a parent as well. And I'm not seeing any questions yet in the chat, so I'm going to ask you at this time, ladies and gentlemen, please use up the chat and pose your questions. But right as I give them time to get their question together, just want to say that, I'm listening to the suggestion that you are giving us with regards to getting the children involved and creating that atmosphere that will get them involved in what's happening and so on. I believe that one of the greatest challenge that we have today as parents, and I'm a parent of 3, one 20, one 17, and one 9-year-old. And so one of the challenge that we face is that the activities that parents, like some of what you would have suggested, although my family and I take part in watching movies, every week we have our movie night. We have a challenge where the children of our time are exposed to a lot of information. And so when we suggest games, certain type of games, our children will respond with notions such as, that's boring, we don't want to do that. Kids today want to be left alone to dive into hours and hours of endless hours of computer or their tablets, what they find interesting. And that is their steal away. You and I know, Mr. Miller, that activities is very important. Family activities together. There is time for your personal life, yes, for children, but parents have to be competing for their children's time. Do you agree with me, sir?
I'm in total agreement with you. It's one of the most, as I had indicated before, it's one of the most challenging times to be a parent. Because as you rightly said, there are so much distractions. The social media and the presence of their gadgets that they have now, these tablets and the phones, and there are so many avenues where they can get information. But what we as parents have to do is to guide them and to help them in navigating the social media platform and as well as the World Wide Web, how they use it and how it can, because it's not all gloom and doom with social media. Lots of information is there, but how do they process the information? So we have to guide them to say, yes, you're accessing this information there, but I want you to look at it and be critical. Do you agree with everything that you read on social media? So we have to encourage them to, yes, look at the information, but be critical. Do you accept, do you agree with what you are processing? Because that's important. Because many times we read things and we just accept it as it is without looking at it to see if it is credible. The person who is writing it, what about the source? Is that person credible? Is it logical? So these things are important. So while they are delving in these things, because we have to understand the generational gap. They are more in this. You and I, our generation would want to read a book. They want to be on the tablets, and yes, they read the Kindle and so on and read a book. But the point is, they too must understand that they have a responsibility to ensure that they are very critical in what they process and what they accept. But I agree with you that it's a challenging environment, and there is no one formula that will work. So every parent has to find a way that will resonate with his or her child. Because, we can't say, well, this works with this family, so I can use this. So you have your movie time, maybe a next family movie is not something that the kids are interested in. So we too have to have a conversation with them and to find out what's the best thing for them and what will keep them occupied. I know they're going to tell something with social media, something on the internet. Yeah, they're going to tell you that because that is the
Yes,
generation.
sir.
Yeah. But I do agree with you that it is a challenging environment, but we can't give up and we can't lose sight of hope. And we must have faith in them because they too have a story and have a perspective. But we must listen to them and engage them because they are very brilliant. The social media has really provided that kind of avenue for them to get so much information, but it's how they use the information is what is important.
Also, Mr. Mitchell, thank you for that response. Also, just want to add that the truth is many of us, and I like the fact that you mentioned generation gap. And the truth is many of us, and even people who are in certain socioeconomic backgrounds and statuses, what happened is that they are not even able to understand the gadgets that their own children have, much less to go and assist them in navigating and sifting through information. That's for some people, for some of us, it might be easier, but for some people, it is a great challenge. So saying that we need to be able to assist them in navigating and what to sift and what not to sift. Sometimes it is the children, especially in these times, that are the ones who offer that kind of knowledge because they are so much way ahead of us with regards to information on our social media. So what I want to ask you now though is, when our children are bombarded with all these information that we are not privy to as parents, and they bring them to us, and some of us are not so aware about what is happening, I don't know how would we as a church assist our people in accurate information in order to dispense the correct information to our children.
Do you have a website? Or you have your
church.
Yes. So what we could do, like with COVID-19, and I know the medical officer of it, Dr. Graham, is a member of your church. So you can get correct information from her pertaining to COVID, and that could be maybe shared in WhatsApp groups, or it could be on your website and so on. So, or you could invite persons to give presentations. I have done presentations already with you on the vaccine, the COVID-19 vaccine. So you can get experts, engage persons who are expert in the field to give the correct information which can be disseminated. Because I know that some persons will have difficulty navigating the the websites and internet to get the necessary information that is important. But there are certain sites that are persons are required, or we encourage, not required, but we encourage persons to use websites like the World Health Organization, the the Pan American Health Organization. Those are some are CDC, the Centers for Disease Control in the United States. Those are some places where you can access very credible information pertaining to the pandemic. So that is important. So as I mentioned about credibility, we have to make sure the source we're getting information from, it is credible, and we can provide that that kind of support. If you want information with regards to COVID-19, we can share that with you. We can do presentations, whether through virtual or physical space. We can do that so as to give people the right information so they can make more informed decisions.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Another question, I'm not seeing a question in the chat, or I'm not seeing any on YouTube either. So let me ask you one more question, if I may. The COVID-19 with regards to mental health, what is the worst case scenario that could happen in regards to how the COVID-19 may have impacted parents, children, caregivers on a whole? What's the worst case scenario with regards to mental health? What's the worst thing could happen if unchecked, unaddressed, not unsupervised information that's coming into us and we feel overwhelmed? What's the worst thing that could happen to us? And what would you suggest that we do or to look for as it relates to what are the symptoms of someone who may be experiencing maybe emotional or anxiety or so on, as the information comes in? And I like what you said earlier, that some of our parents have lost jobs. And so it is very, very difficult for us to maintain our families. So the question is, yes, what is the worst case scenario as it relates to how we deal with our mental health or emotions as the anxiety rises? What's the worst thing that could happen if it's unchecked? Mr. Miller, please unmute. We're not hearing you.
I'm saying you could have depression setting in as a result of the children are not being able to socialize, interact, given the reality of COVID-19. And so if a child is there who is depressed, having emotional issues, the child might not be able to go on to the internet to access learning because there's not adequate data. The connectivity is an issue. Those things, and this is a high-performing child, say a child who likes school and wants to do well, that child can become depressed. So if the child is withdrawn, see, as a parent, you realize the child is normally a talkative one, and you notice the child become reserved. The child is crying, not eating. You notice what happened recently with the child who the stepfather beat and the child subsequently died.
Yes.
You were wondering, the child wasn't eating, but the child apparently seems as if the child was sick. And you as a parent now have to realize that something is wrong. If the child is used to eat and is not eating the way he used to, then something must be wrong with the child. So would have to try to find out. I have a situation with my son. He's around the table, he wants to eat, and I say to him, "Eat the food, man," and he doesn't want to eat. And it becomes a challenge for you as a parent. And if you are not mature, emotionally, you can maybe go and react in a way as that father had done, the father of that child had done, and hit the child, but that is not going to help the situation. So we have to be observant. We know our children. We know when they are. I know my two kids. I know them very well. So when my daughter goes to school and if she had a bad day, I can see it. I see she's not talking. I say, "Jeremy, what happened to you? What is the problem?" And she starts to shrug her shoulder. You know that something is wrong. So you now have to find out what is the situation. And they might not tell you immediately, but later on, they might say, "Well, this happened at school today." So we have to know our children, know their behavior pattern, the personality. We have to understand their personality. But all of us have different personalities. Some children are very talkative. If a talkative child and the child is not talking now, something is wrong. If the child is reserved and, then I can understand, they might not want to say anything, the child is reserved. But you can also have that conversation with them. What is happening? How was school today? How many of us, when the child comes home from school, we ask him how was school? Like in the online setting now, do we ask them how is school, how they getting on with the online? I do that. When I go home in the evening, I say to Anthony, how was the online learning today? How was it? You enjoy it? So things like those, we have to have that conversation with them and to find out what is happening. They might not say what is happening to them now, but they might in the morning you go back and say, "Tell me what happened yesterday. And everything is okay. You had a problem at school." They might want to talk. They might not want to talk immediately, but still have that conversation because you need to know what is happening in their life. Are they having a challenge with a subject? And if they're having a challenge with a subject, then you know that can result in them becoming depressed because they're not understanding. And if the child is a high achiever and the child doesn't want to get a low grade, then that child can become depressed. And depression can result in the child becoming suicidal and start to self-harm. Many things can happen. So we don't want those things. And we have been seeing and hearing of children being attacked and being molested, since the pandemic. And we want our parents to be vigilant and pay attention to what goes on in the life of your child. It's very important.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. I noticed, though, that a great part of your presentation places a great portion of responsibility on the parents. What can we say to the parents to find peace of mind, that we don't fall into depression as well? With all that is happening and all the uncertainties out there, what's going to happen September? How are we going to provide for our children? Are we going to be able to go back to work? What's going to happen to us emotionally, mentally, the anxieties? How can we deal with those in preparation for what is to come? I know we are parents and we have that responsibility. We brought kids into the world. But that's my final question for this evening. I'm not seeing any in the chat, but that's my final question to you.
I think we have had experience before. So even if we don't go back face to face, I know it was challenging, but we were able to weather the storm. So at least we have something to start on as a benchmark. We did it last year and we would have learned and we would have maybe seen where there were gaps in the online environment last year. We can't perfect it because remember, man has the ability to adapt. And we must not lose sight of that. We have seen how we have adapted to this new norm of wearing masks, doing our social distancing, and look at this environment in which we are using to communicate. We have found, because man's basic instinct is to survive. So yes, we were boxed in a corner and schools were out. Then the solution comes, let us use the virtual platform as a means of communicating. And we did. We have navigated very well in finding something that we can use to communicate and to communicate in an effective way. So I do hope that we can go back face to face because I am someone, that's why I'm on the road in the days trying to remind persons and to use our children, appeal to persons, say, we want the children to go back to school. So you can also help us when we see persons out there being careless, not wearing any masks, to say, look here, man, we have to be responsible because we want the children to go back to school. We don't want them to be, and if you are to do a survey now, with all the parents, they will tell you that, look here, I want the children to go back to school. So all of us can coalesce around that. We want the children to go back to school. And so it is incumbent on all of us to take that role in promoting the COVID-19 protocols so as to get school going face-to-face, having the numbers down so we can resume face-to-face classes. But as I've said, we have something to work as a benchmark now, given the fact that we had navigated very well. Given, although some of the children, lots of kids were not engaged in the online platform because of where they are, but they had used alternative methods. Some schools were very innovative in finding means of getting the paper-based work to the children. But it is not, as you rightly said, Mrs. Foster, it is not just the educational attainment, or the lack thereof, but it is the mental health challenges. And so we all have to bear in mind that there's no quick fix and there is not a one approach fitting everybody or being ideal for everyone. So we have to know what we can work with and how we can work as a team in advancing the welfare and well-being of our children.
Okay, thank you, sir. There's a question in the chat, and it says, where can parents access help for children with mental parents access for help for their children with mental struggles? Mr. Miller, unmute, please.
There is a child guidance clinic, at the hospital. So the persons can make contact with the health department, and we can give that information. The person can WhatsApp me or call me, and I could get information to one of the mental health officer. So if you have a child who has difficulty, you can just give me a WhatsApp on 885-3206, 885-3206. Then I will convey the information to Nurse Column or any of the mental health officers to find out when the psychologist comes and how they can make an appointment. So there is a clinic that is being operated from the hospital, but it's being held now because of since COVID by the Independence Park. It's normally on a Wednesday, I think, but I can get that the correct day when it is being held. So if you do have a child who's having that problem, the primary healthcare facility provide that kind of support system.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. I hope that assisted the
So tell the
participant with
person
the
that you
question.
can, 885-3206. You can WhatsApp me.
885-3206.
Yes, you can WhatsApp me, and then I could make contact with the officer who would be able to give specific time and days when the clinic is being held.
So, Mr. Miller, are you saying now in Westmoreland, if there is a mental issue with a child at home here in Westmoreland, where can we physically go to make a report?
Physically, physically now, if you go to the hospital, if the child is having a child and go through A&E, then they will make contact with the mental health officers. So if a person goes to A&E, and they will call one of the mental health officers and they will make contact with the person. But go through the hospital, go through the accident and emergency unit, and then they will make that kind of connection for you.
All right, thank you so much. And if you're not able to get to the hospital and you feel a little peeved or a little nervous about going there, please contact Mr. Miller at 885-3206 and he will make contact for you. All right, that's a genuine question. And
yes,
I believe that many of us as parents would prefer to speak privately with someone versus going to the
hospital. I understand.
All right. We have some comments in the chat. There are no on the YouTube chat. However, there are no questions there this time. There is a question. We're trying to access your question. I'm going to ask my host to assist me with that. In the meantime, I hope that we have given all our attention to the suggestions that were given and the challenge that Mr. Miller gave us this evening, the 3 Ps: protect, provision, and participation. And here goes the question. How can a parent deal with stress as they deal with their children? I think the person is asking, when the parent is stressed, how can they deal with their own children? Mr. Miller, that question is posted to you.
All right. So stress is inevitable, you know. It's a part of our daily life, but it's the management of it. So what we have to bear in mind, there are so many stressors which are responsible for us being stressed. So I guess the person who's asking the question is seeing the child as a stressor. All right. But anyway, what we have to understand, our mental health, we have to be able to manage our emotions, and that's very important. I'm not saying we are perfect and we can have our slip up as it relates to how we deal with our children. But it's important for us to understand that stress is inevitable and we'll always experience that. But it's how we manage it. So we have to understand what is causing this stress. What are the stressors? Is it the phone, or is it the lack of money thereof, or unemployment, or the other issues work related? So all those things, you will have to find what are those stressors which are responsible for you not being able to manage. But if you can find them and try to deal with them, that would be a sign of you being able to manage your mental health. So when we're talking about mental health, it's not just person being sick, having a psychotic problem, but it is about a psychiatric problem. It is about you now being able to manage, because that's a part of life. So you have to manage your emotions, manage your feelings, whatever is responsible for you being stressed. So you don't displace the stress, you don't pass it on to your child, because sometimes we do that, We pass it on to the displacement. We pass it on to our children, and then it becomes just a vicious cycle. So
Yes.
that's important. We have to deal with our own issues as parents, and as I said, it's not easy, and there's no blueprint to be a good parent. We learn as we go, because there's no book that you're going to read to say this is the best model. Every parent, every household has children with different personality, different socialization. So we now have to understand all the dynamics that goes on as it relates to how we navigate in this difficult time.
All right. I hope that was of help. We have another question in the YouTube chat from Ms. Whitelock. And her question is, what about the CDA? Are they accessible? What do you suggest? Mr. Miller, what about the CDA? Unmute, please.
The Child Protection and Family Service Agency, yes, there are officers who are responsible for different areas pertaining to the 3Ps that we're talking about, because the 3Ps fits into the Child Care and Protection Act. Because if the parent is not providing and is not protecting and positive, then there comes the child abuse. So
yes, sir.
if you are in breach of those 3Ps, you can be in for problems with the officers. Your child can be taken from you, because if if your child is not considered to be safe based on the officer's assessment, then they could get the court involved for the child to be taken away from you. So the CDA is still relevant, because they are mandated to protect the children. And they are the ones who are guided by the Child Care and Protection Act. But all of us, have to play a part. If you know of a child being abused, then we need to let the officers be aware of it. And if you know of challenging, and sometimes we might see something happening, and instead of sending it on social media, we could maybe go and talk with the person, the parent, rather than you take a picture and send it on social media and create this, this embarrassment for the parent. But sometimes some parents are frustrated and they doesn't know how to deal with the frustration that they're experiencing. So it's good for us to understand that.
Yes, Mr. Miller, thank you so much. I hope that assisted in that question. But Mr. Miller, as you
Yes.
responded to that question, I wanted to ask you, what about the parents? The children have the CDA, the Child Care and Protection Act for families. Now, can the parent who is stressed emotionally, can they go to the CDA?
Yeah, man, they can.
All right,
They
I
can
just
go to the
wanted to know
CDA
that.
and they can go to the CDA to get support. And they can get, yeah, they don't just look at just the problem of the child, but the parent too can get support. They can provide support for them.
Okay,
They do
thank you,
that.
Mr. Miller. Thank you. There is a comment in the chat. It says, the person says, thank you for this presentation. The high points or the high point for this is managing myself as a parent in order to prevent and to preserve the mental state of my child or children.
Yeah, yeah.
What happens if I can't?
What
happens if I can't?
You are a Jamaican, you can. You know, there's no such thing as can. We are in charge of our, our own destiny, and we have the ability to adapt, and for us to find solution, because man is endowed with the skills to solve problems. So I don't think you can't. I know it's a challenging environment to be a parent in these times, and with the challenges that COVID-19 poses and so on. But I know you have the wherewithal to find a way to deal with your own issues. If you are having challenges, can you ask someone, to assist, to help you to work through whatever problem or whatever challenge that you might have? But this is important because sometimes we need someone to speak with. And I know some of us don't like to talk about our problems, especially our males. We tend to internalize and we don't speak about it. We don't talk about it. But you can find someone, you can find someone who you can confide in, who you can share your concerns with, and allow them to give you some suggestions. You have to eventually solve whatever problem you have, whatever the issues are. The buck stop with you, but the person can, provide that listening ear and to help you to find, the right environment or the right kind of, mix of things, the right things to do, so as to to deal with your mental state.
Thank you, Mr.
But thanks
Miller.
for that question.
Yes, thank you for that question to participant. I think you're looking in my notes. I have in my notes here, although we say Jamaica, no problem, I know we are truly faced with, we know the responsibility is great, but we too are humans and we seek to find a way out. All right, we have another question, a final question in our YouTube chat. And after that question, we are going to be wrapping up with a short clip. We'll draw your attention to that immediately after. The question goes like this. What are the signs of stress that one should look for in a child? I know, Mr. Miller, you gave some tips on that already, but just apparently this person came in a little bit after. So could you just reiterate just for once, for emphasis?
Yeah,
what are the signs that you look for in a child that is stressed?
If the child is not eating, you have a child who is not eating, a child who used to be very talkative, not talking, a child is crying and nothing, the child was not flat, but the child is crying. The child is sleeping for very long hours. The child never used to sleep for very long hours, but he's now sleeping. And becoming disrespectful too. A child can becoming rude, being impertinent, and so on. All those are things that you can detect to say something is wrong. This child never used to be like this. So what is happening within the child's life that is responsible for the child to be displaying those behaviors? So all those are things that could have, indicate that something is going wrong.
And if I might add, Mr. Miller, that also anger.
Indeed.
Anger,
Uh-huh.
yes. If a child never used to be someone who fights a lot,
Yeah.
sometimes they express their depression or their stress through anger, whether directed towards a parent or towards their siblings. And if it's a school related situation, it can be that the child is stressed as they exhibit that kind of anger towards other children. Thank you for that question, and thank you, Mr. Miller, for responding. We want to say a hearty thank you to Mr. Miller for taking time out of his busy, because I know you are busy. I know all our medical personnel that are involved with COVID-19 are overly overworked and overstressed, but I know they have what it takes to handle it. They were trained and they're able to. I want to say thanks to you, Mr. Miller, for taking time out of your family time and your busy schedule to speak with us this evening. We want to say a hearty God bless you, and we hope that we will meet again on maybe a platform like this or face-to-face when the tides are lifted and we are able to meet again. It was a pleasure having you with such an informative presentation and challenging one, a very, might I say, challenging one. I hope we all remember 3 P's: provision, protection, and participation. Parents, there you have it. Thank you again, Mr. Miller. God bless you. We invite you at this time to just listen to this short clip. It relates to mental illness in a general form, as we give you a short clipping of a news clip with regards to how we can deal with mental health issues in our communities and in our country.
Schizophrenia is seen as one of the most serious mental health disorders. Consultant psychiatrist Dr. Earl Wright says while there's no cure for the disorder, family members can help by supporting people affected by this condition. Shamila Pullen tells us more in this evening's health report.
Schizophrenia is a problem with the brain. The condition affects at least 1% of the Jamaican population. Consultant psychiatrist Dr. Earl Wright says of the approximately 2,000 homeless people in Jamaica, over 50% suffers from schizophrenia.
In all countries with the 1%, you are going to find homeless people. And because one of the things about schizophrenia, especially if they are paranoid, they do not want to be around people, they do not trust individuals, and therefore they prefer being on the street where they are not as fearful or they don't come in contact with other people as much as they would if the interaction is limited or they can control the interaction on the street.
Schizophrenia is usually caused by an infection in the brain or through genetics.
If you find a father or a mother that's schizophrenic, it doesn't necessarily mean that every child is going to be schizophrenic, but you have a higher risk factor in those families. When you take a history of an individual with schizophrenia, you usually find somewhere an uncle or somebody else in the family with that disorder, or a disorder, a mental disorder like that.
Taking drugs like marijuana can also make the condition worse. Dr. Wright says there is no cure for schizophrenia. However, medications are available to manage and prevent further deterioration of the brain. But the challenge is most of the people affected do not want to take the medications.
And that's where the family support is important. Early family support, that the family encourages them, ensure that they take their medication, follow up with them, takes them to the clinic. Because if the family is not willing or able to do that, eventually many schizophrenic patients will end up homeless or end up in hospital over and over.
With your health report, I'm Shamila Pullen wishing you good health.
Okay, thank you for sharing with us this evening. We appreciate your presence on YouTube, Facebook, and Zoom. We thank you for giving us your attention this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, we want to give to our family members support, love, whether it is from your church family or your immediate family. We are all one. The word of God says in 1 Peter chapter 5 and verse 7, casting all your cares upon him, for he careth for you. And so even in this stressful time that we are experiencing, many of us might be going through depression, mental, other forms of anxieties, and we feel like there is no way out. But we know when we put our trust in God, we are able to conquer any storm. And so today I want to encourage us to help one another, to help each other, and to encourage each other as we navigate through this time. I want to say to you, ladies and gentlemen, that next week, Thursday, that's July 29th, we have another meeting, same place, same time. And we are looking forward to that. Saturday as well, at July 31st, will be our final evening on our webinar. Looking forward to meeting with you again for some more interesting, informative, and intriguing presentations. I invite you at this time to listen to this worship time as we close off our session. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for having me. God continues to be faithful even in this time. Do not give up hope. God bless you.
God, you're so good. Has he been good to you? I love you, Lord, for your mercy never failed me. In all my days, I've been held in your hand. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, I will sing of the goodness of God. 'Cause all my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good, yeah. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. I love your voice. You have led me through the fire, the darkest nights. You were close like no other. I know you as a father, and I know you as a friend. And I have lived in the goodness of God. Let's raise it together. Sing all my life. 'Cause all my life you have been faithful. Has he been faithful to you? Hey! All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Let's raise it up. Say your goodness. Your goodness is running after, it's running after all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. All my life you have been faithful. 'Cause you're a faithful God, yeah. All my life you have been so, so good. Every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. I will sing of the goodness of God. If he's been good, raise up your worship in the room. Oh, somebody raise up your worship in the room. He's always been faithful. He's always been faithful. Your goodness is running after. It's running after me. Somebody shout it. Your goodness is running after. It's running after. Keep it right here. Your goodness is running. Your goodness is running after. It's running. It's running after me. Your goodness is running. Your goodness is running after. It's running after me. One more time. Say your goodness is running. Your goodness is running after. It's running after me. Your goodness is running. Your goodness is running after. It keeps running after. My life laid down. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. Shout it out, say, your goodness is running after. It keeps running after me. Woo! Come on, worshiper. Lift up a praise to the only faithful God. Raise up a praise because he's good. Raise up a shout because he's good. You are 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 good. It's running after me. Your goodness is running after. It's running after me. Say, y'all say, your goodness is running after. It's running after me. Your goodness is running. Your goodness is running after. It's running after me. You got a better one. Say, your goodness is running. Your goodness is running after. It's running. It's running after me. Your goodness is running. Your goodness is running after. It's chasing me down. It's chasing me down. I can't get away. Your goodness is running after. It's chasing me down. It's chasing you 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 down. Nowhere you can go. There's nowhere you can go. It's gonna find you. It's chasing you down. It's chasing you down. It's chasing me down. It's chasing me down. It's chasing me down. Your goodness is running. Oh, yes it is. Oh, yes it is. Your goodness is running. It's chasing me down. It's chasing me down. It's chasing me down. Your goodness. Oh, it's running after me. There's no way that I can go. It's gonna find me there. There's no way that you can go. It's gonna find you there. There's no place you can go.